Okay, we'll do a little video here. Surprise! So behind me is Bruce Frisco, CTV Atlantic, Saturday night and Friday night. No, Saturday. So he's interviewing somebody, forgot the name. I never watched it, taped it. We'll listen to it. What's this bullshit? I mean, this BS. What they're saying. It's a guy from Halifax. Now we know what they're saying. They never mention drugs. They always say homelessness, homelessness. We're talking about kids 17, 18 years old that they demand their own motel. Here in New Brunswick, Mental Health Act, Section 10, we can't be touched. Anyway, you know the whole story. Let's listen to this BS and see what's going on.
As we've seen even today, the homeless crisis in our region remains a difficult and complex issue with no easy solutions. Heading into winter, there were significant concerns about how the homeless would cope with the falling temperatures. And indeed, they did fall before emergency shelters were up and running. Now the shelters are open, but for the most part, they're not being used.
They're not being used because these metheads don't follow rules. Okay? Get it? Metheads, not homelessness, choose to be homeless.
Joining us tonight with some insight and some perspective, we're always happy to welcome Dalhousie social work professor Jeff Karabanow to the program. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Jeff. Always great.
Who the hell is that guy? Looks like the great Mazuka or whatever.
Great to see you.
Thanks for inviting me, Bruce. Always nice to see you.
We tend to kind of group people together so we can sort of generalize, but when you talk about the homeless population, there are often many factors involved here, right? So I'm thinking of addictions, mental health, and more.
Oh, did he mention addiction? Wow, call the press. Oh wait, they're the press.
Absolutely. You know, there's a real diversity. You know, what they all have in common is that there's no safe, affordable, healthy housing as a foundational base for, you know, a myriad.
You can't give them housing because they will destroy the place, idiot.
Of rationales for why people are on the streets right now.
Should we be surprised then that the emergency shelters aren't necessarily being used?
Well, most of the emergency shelters are being used, so I think there's been a bit of attention on this new one at the forum, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, you know, a lot of this has to do with building good relationships. This is a population that has a lot of trauma, a lot of mistrust of a lot of different organizations and groups and government folks. So it's going to take a little bit of time to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel that it provides the needed services that they're looking for. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And again, it speaks to the fact that, you know, belonging and community are so significant with this population, with all of us, actually. And, you know, being uprooted from one area that they kind of built a bit of a safe sanctuary to go somewhere different that's out of kind of their...
I'll swear, who the fuck wants a member of Metheads to be part of the community?
You know, environment takes time.
Yeah, the encampments themselves become kind of communities, right? And they have certainly in recent months.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, encampment shelters neither are you know, strong responses to a housing and a homelessness crisis here, but they provide
houses. Crisis. These are Metheads. I don't know if I should watch this or not.
You know, encampments provide some positive benefits, and one being that they, you know, kind of have built kind of a bit of a community around it.
They built the encampment for tents for their drug dealers to arrive there. They can't go into a shelter and just say, hey, you owe me $100 or we want some drugs.
There's a lot of, you know, citizens, you know, in the area that are supporting folks. There's, you know, They know each other, in the encampments. There's definitely a sense of community that's arisen, but it's not. It's fraught. This community is also fraught. It's also can be dangerous at times. It can be violent at times. It's not a healthy space as well, and neither are shelters. This is more, a discussion around. We really need some form of healthy, affordable social housing. And I know we keep talking about this, but that's really the answer here.
Yeah, you pointed out to me earlier this week that the shelters can be kind of dangerous or triggering, which is really important when you're talking.
The shelter can be dangerous. Living in tents is not dangerous. That's where the drug dealer arrives and want their money. Shelter, you can get security there, or they're not going through the elsewhere. Not going through the fucking door.
About a population of people who have a deep sense of mistrust. Is the mistrust, does it sort of come from the homelessness, or did the cart go before the horse?
Right, that's a really nice question. Again, I think there's a diversity of kind of responses to this, but a lot of my research and a lot of my kind of clinical work with homeless populations has really highlighted that, being unhoused, living kind of rough, really kind of creates a kind of sense of othering. You don't feel like you belong. You don't feel like you're a citizen of the community.
No, you're not.
And, you don't have the same kind of resources that other folks have. You really feel kind of left out.
Yeah.
And we really, really saw that during COVID as well. And
yeah, you're left out because you don't want to go by the rules. Rules, rule number 1, pay the rent.
Now, you kind of, we've regained an openness in our culture, but at the same time, we kind of have not created the important elements that will provide everybody with safe and affordable housing. So this sense of kind of mistrust is also around the idea that they really feel left out of any decision making. And then you add in, issues around trauma, mental health, addiction, just day-to-day survival, and like the suffering that goes on when you don't have actually a place that you can call your home. Just amplifies this sense of not quite trusting, folks that are offering you things.
Earlier this week, we reported that the number of emergency calls to shelters was on the rise. Fire calls, medical calls, that kind of thing. And you said the responders were really doing a tremendous job in dealing with a lot of these cases in a trauma-informed kind of way, since this is almost becoming a new normal.
Absolutely. And, when I was working with Out of the Cold, I was really impressed by the majority of first responders, and that continues to be the case. This is not their kind of skill set, and they have really kind of, taken it up to kind of really be there, support populations in a deeply compassionate and trauma-informed space. So that's really nice to see. I think we're starting to really understand that homelessness is not simply, that kind of misconceived idea that people just don't want to work, they don't want to kind of fit into society. There's a lot of dynamics here. There's a lot of trauma, like I've noted. There's also, when you don't have any form of safe housing, you can't be kind of, you can't be deeply engaged in, employment and education. You can't kind of get out of that cycle of really
because you got no more brain cells.
And it's not a surprise that we just seen a report on poverty that, this province has the highest rate of poverty in Canada. Right. So this sense also of people just feeling really, really left out and not being able to kind of live and survive the way that we should be in this country.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because you raised an important point, and that is another side to this story, and that's sort of the growing backlash that we're seeing, at least online, from the growing public who are getting frustrated with solutions that are being offered and they're not necessarily being utilized, right? Shelters are open, long-awaited shelters are open, and then they're sitting empty, and folks at home
because they don't go by rules.
What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and again, there's, the value